Hello everyone, welcome to another interesting and informative session of the Analyst brought to you by Vajiram and Ravi. In today's session, we will discuss 9 important articles as featured in the Hindu and Indian Express for your comprehensive understanding of the current affairs. The first 5 main articles are as follows. In the first topic, we'll try to understand the important role played by the opposition in the parliament as the first session of the 18th Lok Sabha starts from today. Then in the second topic, we'll try to examine the voids which exist in the agricultural sector and the reforms that can be taken. Then in the third topic, we'll try to learn about the reciprocal exchange of logistic agreement signed between India and Russia recently. Followed by the fourth topic, where we'll learn about the oath-taking ceremony in the Lok Sabha. And finally, in the fifth topic, we'll try to learn about the 3 stages of the nuclear program which our country has, especially putting impetus upon the plutonium isotope fission. Finally, in the end, there will be news snippets especially curated to help you in the prelims examination, so stay tuned. The lead editorial highlights the importance of opposition in the parliament in scrutinizing the policies of the government, especially emphasizing on the role played by the deputy speaker and the parliamentary committees. This role played by the opposition forms an important component of your GS2 paper under the larger theme of the functioning of the parliament. So before we examine about the dilution of the role of opposition in the previous Lok Sabha, let's first try to understand what constitutes an opposition. So in the parliamentary form of the government which has been adopted by the Indian Constitution, a simple majority, that is 50% of the members plus 1 seat is required to form the government. Thus, let's say if there are 543 members in the Lok Sabha, then the required majority mark is 272. Thus, with winning 293 seats in the recently culminated 18th Lok Sabha election, the NDA alliance has formed the government. Now, all the members of the parliament who are not part of this coalition can be termed as the political opposition, which is basically the India alliance who has won 234 seats, and it constitutes of parties such as Indian National Congress, the DMK, the Aam Aadmi Party, the Janata Dal United, RJD, as well as Shiv Sena faction led by Uddhav Thackeray, your NCP led by Sharad Pawar, and the CPI and CPIM, and many such parties. Now, when we have understood what forms an opposition in the parliament, let's try to understand the important role which is played by this opposition. The first important role is that they act as the scrutiny of the policies which are passed by the parliament by using several parliamentary control tools. What are these parliamentary control tools? The first is your question hour. The question hour is basically the first hour of every parliamentary sitting, where any member, let's say from the opposition, it can ask question to the executive or any minister, and the minister has to answer these questions in the form of stad, unstad, etc. So let's say the government has bought a new bill and that bill has got some problematic provision. Then as a member from the opposition, I can raise the questions to the minister in the question hour and the minister has to answer to that. Now, such questions which are being asked, they are also publicized in the newspapers as well as broadcasted on the news channels. Thus, what is the stand of the government? It is made visible to the larger public. The second is the different kinds of motions which can be used by these opposition members. The first is the calling attention motion. Calling attention motion, which basically calls for the attention of the minister on any urgent public matter of importance. So let's say if there is an issue of ethnic violence which is taking place in any part of the country, then a member from the opposition can bring a calling attention motion, and thus the minister will have to take the immediate notice of that. The second is the adjournment motion. The adjournment motion basically contains an element of censure against the government. Thus remember two things related to the adjournment motion. The first is that to be admitted, it has to have the support of at least 50 members of the Lok Sabha, as well as because it contains the provision of censoring the government, the Rajya Sabha cannot utilize this provision. The third is obviously the much important, the no confidence motion, which basically derive its power from the Article 75 of the Constitution. The Article 75 of the Constitution states that the Council of Ministers or the executive, they are directly responsible to the Lok Sabha which basically constitutes the member who are the representative of the public. So let's say if the government of the day has got no confidence in the parliament, or basically they have become unreflective of the needs of the public, then the opposition can bring the no confidence motion and leading to the fall of Council of Ministers. Also, the editorial highlights the important role which is played by the Speaker and the Deputy Speaker under Article 93 of the Constitution. So besides conducting the daily business of the House, the Speaker also plays a very important role in the certification of bill as a money bill. What is money bill? Money bill is basically any expenditure which is being done or charged on the consolidated fund of India. Now it is up to the Speaker that it provide or certifies that any bill which is being passed under the provisions of Article 109 or 110, they contain the provisions related to money bill. This has led to the passing of such important bill such as your Aadhaar Act. Then the Speaker act as the judging body for the disqualification which takes place under the 10th schedule of the Constitution. So what does 10th schedule provides for? The 10th schedule basically provides for anti-defection, and it was introduced by the 52nd Constitutional Amendment Act of 1985. Which basically says that let's say if there is a member of the parliament which has won on the symbol of a party called as TO, and then that member just defects from this party and join another party, let's say army, then this person or this member will held to be defected, and thus he will be disqualified from the parliament. And who act as the judging body over that? That is your Speaker. Then the Speaker also refer the bills to the parliamentary committees. The editorial also at the same time highlights the role of the parliamentary committees. What are parliamentary committees? Parliamentary committees are basically the committees such as financial committees. The financial committees which consist of your public account, public undertaking and estimate committees. These committees basically examine the audit report which is laid in the parliament by the Comptroller and Auditor General. So they basically ensure that any expenditure of the public funds that is being done through the appropriate channels, and thus it acts as the post-mortem of the expenditure which has been done by the government. Then there are 24 departmental standing committees. Now these departmental standing committees, they provide for deliberation on the bills. So let's say the government is bringing a bill which can affect the farm sector. So this bill will be laid in the front of these parliamentary committees, and these parliamentary committees will examine the various provisions of these bills, right? Now also the member of these bills, they are coming from the wide spectrum of the society. Thus there will be a comprehensive as well as an all-inclusive discussion on the bill, and the provisions which are not in the accordance with the constitutional guidelines, they can be removed. Certain improvements can be made in these bills. Thus, there are certain important channels through which the opposition plays a very important function in the parliament. Another important role is that they ensure the constitutional guardrails. Basically, let's say that the government brings a bill, and under the bill it wants to amend the fundamental right. Can government amend the fundamental right? Absolutely, as per the Keshavan Bharti case of 1973. Now, the government wants to curtail the freedom of movement which is provided under Article 19 of the Constitution, where the government is saying that now there will be no interstate migration to solve the issue of the internal migration which is taking place. However, it is obvious that such bill is not only violating the fundamental right of the people, but at the same time it can have huge impact on the job opportunities, especially from the people who are coming from the underdeveloped state, such as the migrants from the region of Bihar and Uttar Pradesh who are venturing into the regions of Karnataka and Tamil Nadu for seeking the jobs. So they will get impacted. Thus, what opposition can do, that it can bring these provisions in the forefront of the nation and thus act as a scrutiny of the government bills. The next thing is that they can present for the demand of the ignored section. So let's say that our government becomes a pro-capitalist government, and it brings a bill which leads to the commercialization of agriculture. Now, the opposition, it can use such parliamentary control tools as well as the use of media to sensitize the larger public about such commercialization and thus prevent the passing of such bills, as it was done in the case of the farm laws which was brought by the government. The next is that it can highlight the socio-economic issues which are prevailing in the country, and the government of the day might have become ignorant of that. The socio-economic issues such as your unemployment, the high level of poverty. For example, as per the multidimensional poverty index released by UNDP, India has more than 23 crore multidimensional poor people. Then we can highlight, let's say, the racial or the ethnic issues which persist, such as the ethnic violence which was taking place in the Manipur. So all that can be brought in the forefront of the larger public through the use of the parliament. At the same time, such a position can prevent the blindness towards the non-voters. So let's say if I have to form a government, the majority which is required for me is a simple majority. Now, to get to that simple majority, I can focus solely on the northern states such as Uttar Pradesh, Maharashtra, West Bengal, Bihar, Madhya Pradesh, Gujarat and Rajasthan, which can give me almost 241 out of 272 seats. Thus, the government can actually become the ignorant about the needs and the development of the southern states. However, such a position, which also contains the regional parties, it can raise the demand of such southern states in the parliament. And in the last, such opposition enforces the accountability of the government. Because as the Lord Acton has said, that power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. A great example of that was visible in the high noon of Victorian imperialism, such as when the Viceroy of India, Lord Lytton, he was conducting the Calcutta Darbar, the magnificent, the pompous Calcutta Darbar of 1878, at the same time when famine was ravaging the country. Or it can be seen from the tyranny of the Hitler during the 1930s, or the application of emergency in our country in 1970s. Thus, a strong opposition is the need of the hour to ensure the transparency and accountability in the functioning of the government of the day. However, in the recent time, there has been the issue of decline in such parliamentary control. And the first such decline has been seen in the quality of deliberation. A major reason for that is the politicization of the office of the speaker. So see, let's say the speaker is elected among the members of the Lok Sabha, and the majority which is required to elect the speaker, that is simple majority. So that basically means that 272 votes are required to elect the speaker of the house. So it is obvious that the government of the day which has been formed having the majority of 272 will obviously elect the speaker because it plays such important roles. Thus, since the inception of our parliament from the 1950s onwards, the speaker of the Lok Sabha has always come from the ruling party. That has been the precedent. Now let's see what happens, that let's say there are certain bills which can be declared by the speaker as a money bill, and because it is a money bill, it can completely bypass the scrutiny of the upper house, that is Rajya Sabha, because it has no role to play in the money bill. At the same time, many a times there has been started taking place the misuse of anti-defection law. So anti-defection law basically says that if there was a member and that member has defected from a party and has joined any other party, then that person will be considered as disqualified. But who is going to decide on that? That is a speaker. Now let's say what happens that this person was actually in opposition earlier and then it joined a ruling party. Now this speaker of the house who has to decide on this case is also coming from the very same ruling party. So it is obvious that there can be certain bias in the decision of the speaker, and that has been the case because in almost all of the defection cases, the speaker has taken the sides of the ruling party. Thus, the role of a speaker can be considered to be compromise. Then, from the 10th Lok Sabha, from the year of 1991, there started a precedent that the deputy speaker will actually come from the opposition party. However, in the 17th Lok Sabha, there was no election of deputy speaker which took place beside the repeated demands by the opposition. Also, the parliament has a very important functionary, and that is the leader of opposition, which act as a parallel to the prime minister. But as per the convention which has been set by the business rules of the Lok Sabha, to become a leader of opposition, any such party shall have at least 10% of the membership of the house. That means it shall have 55 seats. However, in the 17th Lok Sabha election, there was no single party which had this number, and thus there was no official leader of opposition in the 17th Lok Sabha election to provide for the constructive criticism of the policies of the government. The next is the criminalization of politics which is taking place. So let's say, for example, there has been a criminal, a person who has been charged for the heinous crime. Now that person has been selected to the parliament. And in the parliament, there is a debate taking place about the recent European laws on to prevent the right to privacy. And this person who used to be a former criminal is actually looking up at the ceiling and wondering what actually is right to privacy. This criminalization of politics has significantly increased, also as flagged by the Supreme Court report, where such members with criminal charges has actually increased from 24% in 2004 to 43% in 2009. Then there has been also issues in the decreasing of the productivity, because even the opposition, it has adopted the showmanship kind of politics instead of statesmanship kind of politics, where they have repeatedly resorted to adjournments, motions, to bring the sloganeering in the house, or repeated walkouts, and thus they has reduced the chances for the effective deliberations on the bills which exist in the parliament. That has been the reason because of the repeated decline in the number of discussion and the number of days for which the sessions are being held. Then the constitution, it does not fix any quotas of days of the working. So basically it does not say that you have to held this many number of sessions or for this many number of days in 1 year. It says only that the Lok Sabha shall meet at least 2 times a year, and that's it. So we can see that the number of sittings of the parliament has actually consistently dwindled across the Lok Sabha formations. At the same time, the number or the time which was spent on the budget discussions, that has been declined as well, and it was only 16 hours in 2023. Thus, it shows that how the productivity of the parliament has declined as well. Also, right now we just studied about the important role played by the parliamentary committees such as the financial committees and the departmental standing committees. However, even their role has been compromised because the percentage of the bills which are being referred to these parliamentary committees, it has significantly declined, and it was as low as 13% in the 17th Lok Sabha. Which basically means that the 100 bills which were being brought on the floor of the parliament, only 13 were being sent to these parliamentary committees to sit and discuss upon. Basically, the government was saying that we are absolute, and whatever the bills which we are bringing in, they are sacrosanct and does not require any kind of deliberation. Then there also has been bypassing of the accountability through the use of tools such as money bills and ordinances. So for example, Supreme Court passed a very significant judgment in A. Baranwal case, where it included the Chief Justice of India in the selection committee of Chief Election Commissioner. However, in the matter of days' time, the government brought an ordinance passed by the President under Article 123 of the Constitution and removed the CGI from the selection committee, thus making it quite visible the tussle which was going between the government and the judiciary. Also, as we can see that the bills which has been introduced and passed in the same session of the parliament, that was 69% in the 17th Lok Sabha. And as we were discussing, the time which has been spent on the bills in the Lok Sabha, almost 46% of the bill has been passed in less than 2 hours. So just imagine the important legislations which were being brought by the government, which has such a paramount effect on the nation, and 46% of bills were of that kind that it did not require discussions of more than 2 hours. That shows the decline role of the opposition, and thus the article suggests for certain important steps to take. What we can do to strengthen the parliament? So first of all, we can fix a minimum business duration. We can bring a constitutional amendment, and we can say that at least, let's say, the parliament should sit for 100 days, the Lok Sabha. Then there shall be a statutory ceiling on the adjournments which can be brought by this opposition as well. At the same time, there shall be a compulsory election of deputy speaker, and instead of a convention, it shall be made in the rules of house that such deputy speaker shall come from the opposition party. Also, there shall be a cross-party consensus to adopt statesmanship in the parliamentary functioning. Then, to strengthen the bills, as suggested by the second Administrative Reform Commission report, we can make the committee deliberation stage, or if any bill is being introduced in the parliament, first it will go and it will be discussed and deliberated upon by the parliamentary committees, and after such profound discussion only it will be introduced again in the parliament to be passed. And such deliberation shall be made compulsory. Then we can create a shadow cabinet as it exists in the United Kingdom. So if there is a finance minister in the government, the opposition can create a parallel finance minister here who has a job to scrutinize all the policies related to the finance of the country. Then we can introduce a citizen charter where each and every ministry shall lay down that these are the minimum quality of service which the government is going to provide. Then, to improve the functioning of the members, there shall be a parliament ombudsman who keeps the check on the functioning of these members. At the same time, we need to do the capacity building of the parliamentarians. So let's say make them aware about the modern day needs and the rules which are required to, let's say, regulate the industry 4.0. And the directives under the Kyoto-Holohan case of 1993, where the Supreme Court laid down that any such decision which is being taken by the Speaker on the anti-defection law, it falls under the judicial review, and thus this process shall also be done in an expedite manner. So all these steps are required so that the opposition do the justice to the parliamentary business. On the basis of this discussion, try to solve this particular practice question. If possible, comment your answers in the comment box. We move forward to the next news. The editorial highlights the issue which is being faced by the India's agricultural sector and provide innovative suggestive measures to transform the farm sector. This voids which exist in the farm sector forms an important component of your GS3 paper under the theme of issues in the agricultural sector and revamping. Since the inception of our civilization, agriculture has been the backbone of Indian economy. Whether it was the rise of Mahajanpadas in north or the Vagai civilization in south, it was the surplus of agriculture which sustained our economy. And this is not any much different from the present time as well, because if we look up to the data provided by the budget 2023, the agricultural sector currently employs 54% of the people, the agricultural and the allied sector. The specific number of the people who are employed in the agricultural activities are around 45%, closely followed by the construction sector. The trade, hotel and restaurant consist of 12%. The manufacturing consists of 11% and the transport, storage and communication consist of 5.6%. Thus, this number of people who are employed by the agriculture, they contribute almost to 18% of our gross domestic product and 18% to our gross value addition. So if we look up to the data, the share of the gross value addition of the agriculture, it has been 20% in 2020 and around 18% in the fiscal year of 2022 to 2023. And this GVA has registered a growth of around 3.3% in the year of 2022. Also, the average annual growth rate which is being observed from this agricultural sector is around 4%. Which basically means that, let's say, if in 2023 the agricultural sector amounted to 100 rupees of production and sale, then that has been increased to 104 in the year of 2024. Thus, India is, because of such high amount of production from the agricultural sector, our country is the largest producer of milk, pulses and jute in the world and the second largest producer of rice, wheat, sugarcane, vegetables and cotton. Also in the cotton, we are the largest exporter of the cotton in the world. Thus, the share of our country in the global agricultural production, we stands at second after China, and in the global agricultural export, our ranking is around 9th. At the same time, this agricultural sector majorly contributes to the GDP of the state. As much as that, if you look at Madhya Pradesh, 33% of the GDP of MP, it comes from the agricultural sector, followed by Uttar Pradesh, Rajasthan, Punjab and Andhra Pradesh. All of these states have more than 1/4 of their GDP which is being derived from the agricultural sector. The lowest is for Delhi, followed by Goa. Thus, as we have established the importance of agricultural sector in our economy, what are the voids or the issues as highlighted by the editorial which exist in our agricultural sector? The first and the most major issue is that majority of the farmers who are enrolled in the agricultural sector, they are small land holding farmers. So let's say, for example, if I am a farmer and I want to produce my crops to make some profit, to generate income so that I am able to send my children to good schools like businessmen in the cities. But at the same time, the issue is that I have got only a very small land or a small piece of land with me. Now, let's say I want to grow potato here, but the input cost which I am going to incur here, right, in this small piece of land. So let's say I require high quality of seeds. I will be using the pesticides to wave off the pest and disease. I will be using, let's say, mechanized kind of farming to increase the productivity, cut down the time period of the growth and cutting of the crop. But for all this input, I am incurring a cost of 100 rupees. However, the potato which is being grown in such a small area, that is being sold in the market for only 105 rupees. Thus, it does not make any sense to me to invest so much in the agriculture, because I know that from the small area I have, I will not be able to generate any kind of large profit. And that has been the reason of the falling investment in agriculture, where we can see that the private investment has significantly declined over the years. Also, there exists stunted growth in the export of agriculture. So, for example, the growth in export has been meager low of 10% in the recent years, and the share of agriculture in the total export is as low as 8%. Thus, we can assess that this sector has not been profitable for the majority of the people who are employed here. Also, let's say that if I take all the risk in these inputs and somehow I deliver my market and I reach to the mandi, the government mandi, where the government is saying that we will procure your crop at MSP if no one else is procuring it. But do I have any statutory recognition for this MSP? The answer is no. The government can just not procure it. Then let's say if I am not able to sell my product at the mandi, the next step which is required is either I take it to the cold storage where I safely secure the product to sell in the next session, or what I can do is that I take my product by use of logistic means, let's say truck, to the large market of cities. But it is obvious that first of all, such logistic infrastructure in our country is at a very abysmal state. And the second issue is that even if I somehow reach to that large market, because of all of this logistic cost, the cost of the product of mine will significantly increase. So all these issues has led to the stagnancy in the gross value addition, which used to be around 1.5% in 2012, and in the decade times it has only registered an increase of 0.3%, reaching to 1.8% as per the Ministry of Statistics. Thus, this non-profitability has actually translated into the increasing farmer debts, where the Indian farmers, they have owed almost 60% of their income, where the income from the farming sector or the crop production comes only at 37% of their total income. Thus, the government has taken several important steps, first of all, to augment the farmers' income, where the government under the budget 2023 is trying to specifically provide financial incentives for adoption of micro irrigation. So that will also reduce the cost of irrigation, and at the same time it is also very much related with the climate requirement of the day, where we are trying to promote per drop more crop. Then the government launched the Govardhan scheme. So basically where we are trying to create 500 bio-waste plants. So all the bio-waste which farmers have, let's say agricultural residue or the animal manures, all of that can be used in the plant to generate fuel, which will be compulsorily produced by the government. So that will actually augment the income of the farmer. Further, the government is also providing income support to the farmers under Pradhan Mantri Kisan Samman Nidhi, where 6,000 rupees are provided annually to the farmers in the 4 months installment of rupees 2,000 each. The government has also strengthened the minimum support price structure. It has recently launched the recent rates of Kharif season. For that coverage, you can just see the previous session of the Analyst. Also, in the 2023 budget, the government tried to establish primary agricultural credit societies to provide official channel credits to the farmers, whose major source of debt is actually informal channels, which actually have high rate of interest, and thus the debt of the farmers increases over the years. Also, the government is trying to secure the crop of the farmers by bringing them under the Fasal Bima Yojana. The Fasal Bima Yojana, which basically act as an insurance for the crops, and here the government has set for itself no subsidy target, which basically means that whatever will be the cost of the insurance, 90% of that can be borne by the government. The government in the budget 2023 also launched an agricultural accelerator fund to encourage the startups in the rural areas, especially to include the technological innovations in rural areas. Also, to strengthen the input facility, the government launched a clean plant program to boost the production of high value horticulture crops. Basically, where we are trying to provide these farmers high germplasm quality of seeds. Then the government has launched a digital public infrastructure where it is trying to disseminate farmers various important information, such as what is the current market cost of the product which they are producing, or the estimate of their production as per the changes in the climate. Then to increase the absorption of the urea, so to use less amount of fertilizer by the farmers, the IFFCO has launched nano liquid urea, which actually act as the kind of a nanoparticles, and it reduces the total amount of urea which is being used by the farmers. Several other initiatives has been taken, such as making India a global hub for millets under the Shri Ann scheme. The editorial actually also provides for certain innovative suggestions. The first suggestion it says is that the government shall invest in the climate smart agriculture. Climate smart agriculture in the sense that, let's say, Indian Council of Agriculture Research, it shall try to create heat resistant crops. Also, we can try to promote the micro irrigation infrastructure, And to do all of this, the report suggests that we shall invest at least 1% of our GDP in such agricultural research. The second it says is that the farmer shall have access to the best technology. So let's say if the farmers of the USA are using the drones to sprinkle the pesticides, and that reduce the cost and further lead to good targeting of the pesticides by the crops, then such technology shall also be made available to the Indian farmers. The third is to remove the consumer bias in the policy framework. So many a times what happens that as we have taken a target under the National Food Security Act of 2013 to provide 75% subsidized food to the larger population, many a times the government actually starts putting down export restriction on some staple food such as the horticulture crops of tomato, onion and potato. The report suggests that such restriction by the government shall be removed so that the market-based price discovery can be obtained for the goods of the farmer. For that, it also suggests that we can open up the rice export, and then we can provide 15 to 20% of export duty on this rice to recover the cost of the fertilizer and agriculture. Also, it suggests for building a kind of a value chain. So it says that from the farm to the foreign markets, there shall be a strong value chain. So from the farms to the large mega parks which the government is creating to the foreign markets, try to create a value chain. Value chain, let's say for example, if you are producing, the farmer is producing milk here. So here there shall be a cold storage facility. Then there shall be some value addition done. So we can make various kind of products from this milk, such as let's say chocolate, various kind of creams, all of that. And that can be sold to the foreign markets at a higher rate. So that will actually lead to the better price discovery as well as the increase in the income of the farmers. Then we can transfer the fertilizer subsidy from the Ministry of Chemicals and Fertilizers to the Ministry of Agriculture. The fertilizer subsidy, which as per the budget estimate of 2023 is around 1.8 trillion rupees. Also, it says that the subsidy which is being provided on the fertilizer, that subsidy shall be directly given to the farmers as a digital fertilizer coupon. And then it is completely up to the farmer that whether the farmer want to use it to buy the pesticide, or simply the farmer can use the organic farming method, the natural farming method, and use that income as a kind of a bonus which it gets to not use the fertilizers. With that, we can actually get to the ideal ratio of the fertilizer, that is 4:2:1 for your nitrogen, phosphorus and potash. So just try to keep the suggestions in your mind and we move forward to the next news of the day. After being held up for years, the reciprocal exchange of logistic agreement between Russia and India has recently been finalized as Russia has approved this mutual logistic agreement. This RELOS, or the Reciprocal Exchange of Logistic Agreement, forms an important component of your GS2 paper under the theme of effect of policies and politics of countries on India's interest. What are these logistic agreements? The logistic agreements are basically the kind of military deals between two countries that take place bilaterally. So let's say you are a country A and I'm a country B, and both of us decide that we are going to mutually share some military level of engagement over the course of the years, then that can be termed as the reciprocal exchange of logistic agreement. How this RELOS is going to help India? What are the advantages which it offers to us? The first is that now there can be much more coordination in the military exercises which take place. So for example, there is a trilateral exercise which we conduct with Russia, that is Indra. So it will help us there. It will also help in the training of the tri-services. So now let's say there is a member of Indian Army and a member of Russian Army. Both of them can train together in the advanced mode of warfare. Also, now the ports of Russia can provide us as a port of call in the case of emergency. Then there is humanitarian assistance and the disaster relief. So let's say if there is a disaster which is taking place on a far-flung island of India and there is a Russian ship nearby, so that Russian ship will come to aid of the Indians. as well as it will further boost the technical cooperation and leads to the development of the supply of weapons. Now, do India has such logistic agreements with other nations? Yes, indeed. We have signed agreements with various countries such as France, Singapore, South Korea, USA, Japan. So we have kind of finalized such military logistic agreement with all the Quad countries. At the same time, with USA, we have signed all the major 4 logistic agreements which a country can sign with USA, such as LEMOA, which provides each other country such as US and India to use each other bases for the refueling and replenishment purposes. Then there is COMCASA, where we can actually use the United Nations encrypted communication equipments. Also, there is BECA, with which we have got the geospatial information on maps and satellites for the defense purposes. And the GSOMIA, with which we have got protection and handling of the classified military information which USA will share with us. Also, we are creating such logistic agreement. We have done with Russia, we are done with South Korea, we have signed with Singapore, we have signed with France here at Reunion Island. So India is basically strengthening its military engagements, especially in the region of Indo-Pacific. Now the question arises that what is the importance of RELOS in this regard? So as per the article written by a professor of Cambridge University, the Arctic Circle, which comprises of this particular region, where there are certain countries which claims the areas around this Arctic Ocean, which also forms the Arctic Council. The countries such as Canada, Denmark, Finland, Iceland, Norway, Russia is a part of that, Sweden and the United States. So as per the professor, this Arctic Circle recently, as per the report of NASA, it has lost 21,000 miles of sea ice. So let's say this was the Arctic region and it was covered with ice for years, but because of the global warming, this ice has started melting, and thus this region of land, which is basically unclaimed territories, there exists no international boundary in this region. This region has come into the forefront or has been exposed, and thus it has led to the modern gold rush over the region's unclaimed territory and natural resources by various countries such as USA, Russia, Canada. Most of the region is actually being claimed by Russia and Canada. Why? Because as per the US Geological Survey, this region of Arctic consists of 1699 trillion cubic feet of natural gases. To make you understand the importance of this, just remember this fact that this amount of natural gas is actually the whole amount which exists in the whole of Russia. At the same time, 3 times more than the whole natural gas reserves of USA. Also, this region lies in a strategic position between the North America and the region of Eurasia. So, in the case of future warfare, if the Cold War conditions starts developing again, this region can become a major battleground for the various countries. That is why the China has also started claiming a kind of a right on this region by integrating it with a kind of a polar Silk Road. And that is the reason that why India has increased its presence in the region. So India has become an affiliated member of this Arctic Council, as well as we have signed the RELOS with Russia. So that will actually provide us that our ships, it can connect from Chennai safely to the region of Vladivostok here. We can also follow this route, and we can then the land route of the whole European region, and then from the St. Petersburg we can claim the region of this Arctic Ocean, claim our presence there, try to do experiments, research explorations, all of that, as well as it will also provide us military tactics advantages in that particular region. Also, the India and Russia relations, since the time when Russia actually helped us, when we were engaged with the war of the liberation of Bangladesh, and US was trying to create pressure on us, Russia is helping us since that time. Now, if we look at military engagements which India has with Russia, it has kept on growing since the 1960s time. For example, in 1963 was the first time when Indian Air Force inducted the first MiG aircraft. Then by 2021, the Russia's military sales to India, it crossed $70 billion. Currently, 70% of our military hardware and software, it actually has a Russian origin. Also, there are certain other important steps which we have taken in the recent year, such as procuring of Triumph air missile squadrons, the BrahMos supersonic cruise missiles. This was asked in your prelims examination. The Triumph missile was asked in your mains examination. Then we are also trying to procure Grigorik class of guided missiles, the An power attack submarines or your Chakra 3, the Kalashnikov assault rifles or AK-203, and various other MiG and Sukhoi fighter jets. Thus, remember the importance of RELOS agreement which we have signed whenever you are writing on the internal security or on the national security. Remember these important facts for your prelims examination, and we move forward to the next news. As the first session of 18th Lok Sabha begins from today, it will be marked by the oath-taking ceremony by the members of the parliament. This process of oath-taking forms an important component of your GS2 paper under the larger theme of functioning of the parliament. So let's first try to understand what is the procedure of the oath-taking. So when the 17th Lok Sabha dissolved, it did not lead to the immediate relief of the office by the speaker. On the other hand, the speaker leaves the office when president, following the precedent under the Article 95 of the Constitution, appoints for a pro tem speaker. Pro tem speaker, earlier it used to be a convention that the oldest member of the parliament will become the pro tem speaker. This pro tem speaker takes oath in the front of the president. The pro tem speaker currently is your Bhartruhari Mahtab. So he will take the oath in the front of Draupadi Murmu, our honorable president. Then the other members, they will take oath in the front of the pro tem speaker. And finally, when the member has taken the oath, after that there will be an election of the speaker among these members. So just remember this process. Now the question arises that, okay, so the term of a member of parliament, does it starts after he has taken the oath in the parliament, in the Lok Sabha? The answer is no. As per the section 73 of the Representation of People Act of 1951, the term of a member of parliament starts from the day of the declaration of the results. So if the Election Commission of India released the result on the 4th of June, the term of the member of Lok Sabha started from that very day. Thus the question arises that, okay, so the term of Lok Sabha member has already started. Then what is the significance of this oath after all? As per the Article 99 of the Constitution, a member cannot debate or vote in parliamentary proceedings unless and until that member has already taken the oath. Then Article 104 says that, let's say if there is a member and he has not taken the oath and then he participated in the parliamentary proceeding, then there will be a penalty which will be charged on that person, and that is of a magnanimous amount of rupees 500. A question arises here. Okay, so does no one can participate in the parliamentary proceeding without taking oath? Now remember here that as per the Constitution, a person, an individual, can become the minister of the government without being elected for at least 6 months of time. So within 6 months of time, he shall become the member of one house or another, or he will lose his ministership. Thus, when a person who has become a minister but is not a member of any house, he can also participate in the parliamentary proceeding, and thus he has not taken the oath as a member. So there exists an exception for such individual who has become the minister. Now, what are the significant changes which has been made in oath since the time of its inception? So remember that when the oath was being devised, in the original draft, B.R. Ambedkar had written only that the member shall adhere to the true allegiance to the Constitution. However, if we look at the current oath, which is provided under the 3rd schedule of the Constitution, the member takes an oath in the form of that I, let's say Arman, swear in the name of the God that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the Constitution of the India. So the member of the parliament, they take the oath to bear the allegiance to the Constitution of India on the name of God. In the original document, it was only true allegiance to the Constitution. But there was an opposition which was made by K.T. Shah and Mahavir Tyagi, who said that we shall include the name of the God as well, because the God act as the sanction to the action which we take as a human being or the member of parliament, which was agreed by the B.R. Ambedkar. So if a member is reading this particular oath and it is swearing on the name of the God, then that is called as oath. On the other hand, if a person remove the God from the oath and just affirm to agree with the provisions of the Constitution and pay allegiance to that, then that is called as affirmation. In the 2019 or the 17th Lok Sabha, 87% of the member took oath, which means that they swear on the God, and 13% took only allegiance to the Constitution. By the 16th Constitutional Amendment Act of 1963, it says that the oath taker shall also adhere to uphold the integrity and the sovereignty of the country. There are only two such functionaries in our country who takes the oath where they say that I am going to protect the Constitution, while members are paying allegiance to the Constitution. Such two functionaries are your President and your Governor. Now a question arises here that a member of parliament who is jailed, can he take oath as well? The answer is yes. So for example, the constitution says that if a member has not attended the parliament for consecutive 2 months or 60 days, then his membership will be cancelled. Thus, the courts has taken the regard of this and they allow for a provisional bail to such member who is in the jail, that he can come and take the oath. So keep these important facts in your mind. We move forward to the next news, where the article throws light on the fissile plutonium-240, which is a great indicator of nuclear weapons and thus it shall be regulated. This plutonium isotope fission reaction forms an important component of your prelims paper under the larger theme of science and technology. So before we dwell upon India's 3-stage nuclear program, let's first try to understand certain basics. The first is that what is an isotope? Isotope is nothing but the form of the same element, but it has got different numbers of neutrons and the same number of protons. So let's say that the atomic mass of an element is decided by the numbers of protons and neutrons. So as the number of neutrons is different or changing, it means the atomic mass of the same element will change and thus there will be different isotopes. Now try to understand this, that there are certain fertile and fissile materials. What are fertile materials? Fertile materials are such as uranium-238 and thorium-232. However, there are certain fissile materials such as uranium-233, 235 and plutonium-239. The fissile isotopes are the one which can be used directly as a nuclear fuel, which basically means that uranium-238 and thorium-232, the large reserves of thorium which we have, we cannot directly use it as a nuclear fuel, right? The fissile materials such as these can be directly used as a fuel. Also remember a very important detail, that uranium-235 is the only fissile isotope that occurs naturally. Now coming to the 3 stages program of this. So the first is where we are using uranium-235, which is occurring in the nature, as the fuel. And here, to neutralize or to moderate this fuel, we use a heavy pressure water reactor where we basically use deuterium. Deuterium is nothing but the isotope of hydrogen. So here it uses the natural uranium-235 to generate the electricity while producing the fissile plutonium-239. In the second stage, we use this spent fuel or plutonium-239 as the source of fuel, right? So here in the fast breeder reactors in the stage 2, which we are doing in the Kalpakkam nuclear power plant in Tamil Nadu, we are using this plutonium-239, which has been kind of produced as the extra or the spent fuel from the first reaction. We are using that again. Plutonium-239 is a fissile material, so it can be directly used to generate the nuclear power. And then we will convert it into fertile thorium into fissile uranium-233, and that will become our stage 3. Now, when we have understood about this, what does the article says? The article says that the plutonium-239, which is a fissile material being produced as a spent fuel from the first generation of our nuclear reactor, and that we are going to use in the second one, it basically, when it captures a neutron, it converts into plutonium-240. Now, what does this plutonium-240 does? Plutonium-240 generates a spontaneous nuclear fission reaction where it does not require any external neutrons, and at the same time this plutonium-240, it undergoes this spontaneous fission and starts emitting alpha particle. Now, because it starts generating alpha particle, it is considered as a weapon grade plutonium, but there is a condition. The condition is that if the composition by weight of this plutonium is less than 7%. However, if the mass of this plutonium contains more than 19% of the plutonium-240, then it is considered as a reactor grade fuel and not as a weapon grade fuel. So, for example, if the study says that if we are conducting any kind of a research and we are finding in these nuclear facilities the remnants of plutonium-240 which emits alpha particle, it means that some nuclear test is being done there, and thus such plutonium-240 has to be regulated. So keep these important things in your mind, and we move forward to the next section, where we are going to cover some important news which can help you to eliminate some important statements in your prelims examination. So let's start. The first news is about the Commando Battalion for Resolute Action. What is this COBRA or the Commando Battalion for Resolute Action? It is basically was created in 2008 as a specialized unit of Central Reserve Police Force, where these Cobra warriors are also considered as the jungle warriors, and they are trained specifically in the guerrilla warfare to curb the Naxalism which is impacting the various states of our country, such as regions of Bastar, Malkangiri, Khammam, your West Midnapur district, and all of that. Now, this Cobra is also being deployed to deal with the insurgency which is taking place in the northeast part of the country. The Cobra unit has been in the news because sadly some of our brave warriors were actually killed by these Naxalites. Moving forward to the next news, where we are going to talk about the decennial census. So basically, what is census? Census is basically the collection of your demographic and the socio-economic data, which can help us in database policy making. So for example, this data which is generated by the census, it is used to determine the samples for various important schemes such as your consumption survey, your national family health survey, periodic labor force survey, your key indicators of social consumption in India, for your National Food Security Act and the National Social Assistance Program. Now, this practice of a decennial census was first started by W.C. Plowden, who was the censor commissioner in the year of 1881, and at that time who was the viceroy of our country? He was Lord Ripon from 1880 to 1884. Under this practice of decennial census was started. So, does our constitution talks about the census? Indeed, yes. It mentions under Article 246 that census is a union subject conducted by the central government, and for that the government has also enacted an act called as Census Act of 1948, where this practice of census falls under the Office of Registrar General and Census Commission, who works under the Ministry of Home Affairs. The next news talks about the Kanha Tiger Reserves, which is in the two districts of Madhya Pradesh, that is your Mandla and Balaghat, which is considered as the paradise for the tiger enthusiast. And you guys can see the whole area of the Kanha Tiger Reserve, where there are around 75 to 85 estimated number of tigers. It was created under the Project Tiger in 1973, in the very same years, and with which under the Project Tiger, where we try to conserve this magnificent species of tiger, right now as per the last tiger census, we have around more than 3,100 tigers. But still, as per the IUCN list, the tigers are listed as an endangered species. Remember that this Kanha Tiger Reserve is the largest national park in the central India. The question for you for the day is that which is the largest national park in our country? Moving forward, here in Kanha Tiger Reserve, you guys can also find the state animal of Madhya Pradesh, that is Barasingha, which is listed as a vulnerable species on the IUCN and on the Schedule 1 of the Wildlife Protection Act of 1972. Also, these Kanha Tiger Reserves are known for their evergreen sal trees. We move forward to the last news. The last news which talks about the reusable launch vehicle, which has been successfully conducted by the ISRO. What is a reusable launch vehicle? It is basically a winged vehicle that will take off like a rocket and then it will glide back to the land like a plane, just how it has been successfully conducted by the SpaceX of Elon Musk. Now, why we are using such reusable launch vehicle? The idea is that once we have given the enough velocity to the satellite to propel into the space, then the rocket which is being used, it is completely wasted, and thus that lead to the high cost of the project. However, this reusable launch vehicle, it will separate the satellite here, and then it will have a glided descent, and then it will re-enter the atmosphere from the Karman line, and then it will splash down in the water, thus saving us a lot of money. For that purpose, a various state-of-art technologies has been used, such as the accurate navigation system, the Ka-band radar, the use of Navic receiver, and all of that. And that mission has actually been successfully conducted by the ISRO. That has been the third stage, and then there will be a final stage where we will try to use it with much larger satellites. With this, we have reached to the end of our discussion today. Do not forget to attempt the questions at the end of the video and test your knowledge. We will meet in a very interesting discussion very soon. Till then, all the very best for your preparation, and thank you.